Today we're going to build up a new bike from all these parts, and hopefully do a decent job of showing how it all goes together. This is meant less as a detailed how-to and more of an overview of how a bike goes together. The bike we're building up is a Niner Air 9 hardtail. It's an aluminum frame designed around 120mm suspension fork. I like this bike because it's relatively light, but still sturdy enough to handle some aggressive trails. The first thing I like to do in building a bike is to install the seat post so I can clamp it in the repair stand. We will install the dropper seat post cables a little later on, but for now, we'll just use the post to hold the frame in place. On this bike, Niner used a press-fit bottom bracket. Press-fit bottom brackets press into the frame directly instead of screwing in using threads. Because press-fit bottom brackets can creak over time, I'm going to install this threaded press-fit hybrid from Wheels Manufacturing. To install it, we just need to press one side into the frame until it's seated, and then we'll thread the two halves together. These bottom brackets are awesome because they are pretty much bomb-proof and they reduce the risk of the press-fit creaking. Next, we'll install the chainring on the cranks. To do this, all we need to do is slide it into place and then tighten it down using the supplied tool. Then, we just need to make sure we have the correct spacers in place and slide the crank through the bottom bracket. Once we install the left crank arm, we tighten down the cap and then the two pinch bolts. I also like to measure the crank arms afterwards to make sure they're installed evenly. To install the fork, first we need to make sure we have a crown race installed. The crown race presses onto the fork and allows the lower bearing to center itself and disperse load evenly. There are a few ways to install a crown race, but I like using this little press I made from a few parts at Home Depot. Once that's installed, we'll grease everything and then install the fork and headset to mark the steer tube for cutting. I like to leave a little extra room so I can adjust the handlebar height up or down in the future depending on the terrain. To cut the steer tube, I like to use a pipe cutter and then a reamer to clean up the edges. Next, we'll install a star nut and reinstall the fork. To install the handlebars, I like to loosen the stem faceplate and then slide them through. Usually, I cut my handlebars down to a width of 7/60, but since I borrowed these from another bike, they're already cut. Okay, let's get the wheels ready to go. I always like to install the tires and get them ready first. A little pro tip is to align the logo of your tire with the valve stem. This is one of those little details mechanics like to hang their hat on, and it lets you find the valve a little quicker when you need some air. I usually try to install the tires by hand if possible, and to do that, I like to install one side first, pour some sealant in, and then install the second side. One little trick is to keep pushing the tire bead into the center of the rim as you go. This will make the tire fit as loose as possible on the rim, and usually if I pay good attention to the step, the tire will go on by hand. On thicker tires, sometimes I'll use the tire lever to get the last few inches installed. Since the brake rotors we're using are center lock rotors, we just need to remove the lock ring, slide on the rotor, and then reinstall the lock ring. I had to borrow this wheel from another bike, and it already had a 12-speed cassette installed, so I'm just going to leave that one alone. Now that we're done with the wheels, let's throw the rear wheel on the bike. Before installing the derailleur, I like to check the hanger for alignment. This one was a little bent out of the box, so I'm glad I checked. To install the chain, I like to make sure the derailleur is in the smallest cog and the B-tension screw is nearly all the way loose. Then I'll make sure the chain is just short enough to avoid it having any droop or slack in it. Keep in mind, there are a few different ways to do this. This is just the way that I prefer. Now let's install the controls and get all the cables sorted out. I like to install the shift cable and housing first, and to do this, I'll go from the back of the bike and work my way forward. It's a good habit to make sure that there's enough cable so the bars can spin a full 180 in the event of a crash. Once the housing's cut, we'll push the cable through and attach it to the rear derailleur. Then I'll shift through all the gears and make sure everything is running smooth. If you're curious to learn more about installing and tuning a derailleur, we have a full video that I'll put down in the description and I'll include at the end of this video. This bike will be using 180mm rotors front and rear, and since this bike comes standard for 160mm rotors, we'll just need to run a little adapter under the brake caliper. Then we'll run the brake cable up to the handlebars and cut it about the same length as the shift housing. After cutting the brake cable, we need to press in a new hydraulic barb, install an olive, and then thread the cable into the lever. I'll probably need to do a quick bleed before my first ride too, just to make sure any air is out of the system, but for now we're good to go. To adjust the brake alignment, I like to make sure that the caliper is loose, and then I'll squeeze the brake a few times to move the pistons out. Next, we'll spin the wheel, drag the brake until it stops, and then slowly tighten the bolts down to make sure the caliper doesn't move at all. If you do everything just right, your brake should be noise-free when the wheel is spinning, and the lever will feel nice and solid when you squeeze it. The process is pretty much identical for the front brake as well. Now we'll pull the bike off the stand and install the dropper post cable. First, we'll run some shift housing through the frame and leave a little bit sticking out of the seat tube. Then we'll measure how much cable will be displaced when we insert the seat post. After measuring that, we'll go to the front of the bike, find a mark where the housing looks good, and then subtract the insertion length from that mark. Then we'll just make a cut, install a cap, push the cable through, install the seat post, and connect everything to the lever. All that's left to do now is install a seat and some pedals on the bike, and then we're ready to ride. I'm really stoked on how this thing turned out, and I can't wait to use it in some of the tutorials and skill videos for you guys. I was planning on a trail ride to test it out, but the trails nearby were closed from rain, so I figured we at least had to jib around for a little bit. I hope you had fun seeing how this bike went together, and it brought back a lot of memories hopping on a hardtail again. If you have any questions, let us know in the comment section, and if you enjoyed this video, it'd be awesome if you could share it with a friend. Thank you all so much for watching, hope you have fun riding, and we'll talk to you next time.